At the age of 100, Abraham's life would change because Sarah had a son and Isaac was his name. But when Ishmael teased Isaac, Sarah watched in dismay. So she gathered Hagar and her son and sent them on their way. When Hagar got to Beersheba, she was about to give up, but God brought a well of water for her to fill up her cup. So they lived in the desert and they got along just fine. Ishmael learned archery and his mom found him a wife. Now Abraham and Abimelech swore to never mistreat each other, but little did they know their relationship would soon suffer. Abraham approached Abimelech and they had a debate. Abraham claimed that a well was a part of his estate. You see, they didn't know the well was actually placed there by God, back when Hagar needed water and Ishmael's tears wouldn't stop. But Abraham really thought that the well was his, so he accused Abimelech's men of stealing it. Then he offered 7 sheep in exchange for his well. Abimelech agreed and they said farewell. They departed in the Philistine country as their relationship fell, and that's how Beersheba got its name, the oath well. As Isaac got older, God gave Abraham a test to see if he would sacrifice his very best. So he took his son Isaac to a mountain in Moriah and prepared to offer his body up to the Messiah. That's when an angel stopped him before Isaac was dead, and so he offered up a ram to God instead. When God saw that he didn't hesitate to offer up his son, he knew that Abraham feared him over everyone. Because of his obedience, Abraham was blessed. But not only him, his whole family had progressed. His brother Nahor gave birth to Uz, Bethuel, and many more. Then Abraham returned to Beersheba to see what was in store. At the age of 127, Sarah passed away. Abraham mourned for her day after day. Then he paid Ephron to have her buried away. In the cave of Machpelah is where she would lay. Abraham had his servants swear under his thigh not to get Isaac a wife from the Canaanites. So his servant traveled to Abraham's hometown, to the city of Nahor, where his brother was found. That's where they found Rebekah, Nahor's granddaughter. Isaac fell in love the moment that he saw her. So they got married, and she became his wife, and she gave him comfort after his mother died. Abraham got married again, and her name was Keturah. They had other children, including Midian and Shua. But he passed away at the age of 175 and was buried in Machpelah next to Sarah, his wife. Ishmael prospered and had sons and daughters. At 137, he was buried in the cave with his father. At first, Rebekah was barren, but God gave her twins. But their movements caused her a lot of pain from within. Esau came out first with a red and hairy appeal. Then out came Jacob while holding Esau's heel. Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob more. Esau loved hunting while Jacob preferred the indoors. One day while Jacob was cooking a red stew, Esau was hungry, so he made a bold move. He traded up his birthrights just for a plate, so they called him Edom for the red stew he had ate. Now there was a famine in the land of Gerar, but God told Isaac to stay where you are. When people questioned his wife, he did just like his father. He lied and pretended that she was his sister. Abimelech found out and asked why did he lie. Sleeping with Rebekah would have ruined their lives. They left Rebekah alone knowing that she was his wife. So Isaac stayed in the land and started to thrive. Isaac planted crops and became a wealthy man. So they destroyed his wells and kicked him out of the land. They went back to Gerar and dug wells again, the same ones Abraham originally gave to them. While digging in the valleys, they discovered 3 more, but claiming the wells was no easy chore. After debating with Gerar, they gave the wells a name, Esek and Sitnah, for all the trouble they faced. While digging the last well, there were no limitations, so they named it Rehoboth, which means wide open spaces. Isaac went to Beersheba, where God promised him prosperity. Later, Abimelech apologized for his anger and jealousy. The two made an oath and departed as friends, but Isaac's blessings had only just began. Later that day, Isaac's servants had good news. The well they were digging had fresh water coming through. That's how the city of Beersheba got its name, the oath well, which to this day still remains. As Isaac got old, he was nearly blind, so he had Esau cook him a meal before he died. Isaac planned to bless Esau, for he was his first son, But Rebekah was listening and she beat him to the punch. She cooked the meal and changed Jacob's clothes, hoping that Isaac would never know. Now Esau had hair all over his skin, but with the hair of a goat, it was an easy fix. At first, Isaac was weary about Jacob's voice impressions, but in the end, he still gave him his blessings. When Esau finally came back, Isaac was confused. They boiled over with anger as they felt misused. Esau felt so betrayed he plotted to kill his brother, but Jacob found out from Rebekah his mother. That's when Rebekah told Jacob to run to Haran, for there he could live with his uncle Laban. When Esau found out his father disliked the Canaanites, he decided to marry one solely out of spite. On his way to Haran, Jacob had a dream where God promised success for him and his offspring. When he awakened, he knew this place was special, so he changed the city's name from Luz to Bethel. He set up a pillar as a memorial to God, and he promised to tithe off of everything he got. Jacob continued to travel as he headed east. That's when he noticed a well surrounded by sheep. But the water was blocked with a heavy stone. One single man couldn't move it alone. They waited for others to move the stone out the way. But when Jacob saw Rachel, he didn't hesitate. He moved the stone and then watered the sheep. Then he kissed Rachel as they started to weep. Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, so Jacob moved in and followed his expectations. Jacob worked 7 years to have Rachel as his wife, but when the time came, he was in for a surprise. Rather than bringing Rachel to the marriage bed, Laban's oldest daughter Leah was placed there instead. Since Leah was older, he had to marry her first. Then Rachel would cost him 7 more years of work. When God realized that Rachel was loved more, he opened Leah's womb and Reuben was born. After giving birth to Reuben, Leah still wasn't through. She had Simeon, then Levi, and Judah too. Now Rachel was barren and she felt betrayed, so she had Jacob bear children through Bilhah, her maid. Bilhah gave birth to Naphtali and Dan, which made Leah jealous because she was barren again. She gave her maid Zilpah to Jacob as a wife. Zilpah had Gad and Asher to Leah's delight. Rachel let Leah sleep with Jacob a few more times in exchange for the mandrakes that Reuben supplied. Leah had Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah, her daughter. Then Rachel had Joseph, for God hadn't forgot her. As Jacob prepared to leave, he asked Laban for a favor, to let him keep the spotted animals for all his hard labor. At first Laban agreed, pretending everything was fine. Then he removed the speckled animals just in the nick of time. But Jacob peeled the bark from the surrounding trees and placed them by the waters for the animals to drink. As Jacob continued to water Laban's flocks, they mated and had offspring with speckles and spots. Jacob's possessions grew larger and larger by the day, because what God has for you, no man can take away.